Thank you very much. It's always a pleasure to moderate a panel of such experienced and esteemed speakers with a lot of experience in the industry. What I'm going to do is actually set out some ground rules for how we'll run the panel today. We have a 50-minute slot, and it's always good getting questions from the audience so that we can sort of answer the questions that you're looking to be answered. And what I'd like to do is, as the panel progresses, please do write your questions down, send it in, and we'll collect the questions during the panel. And during the last 10 or 15 minutes, I'll actually go through the questions, and you can ask the questions of the panel as a whole, or if you have a specific question for any one of the panelists, just mark it on the paper, and I'll ask the specific speaker to answer that particular question. How we're going to kick off today is actually talk about innovation and emerging trends in ready-to-eat, ready-to-cook, and packaged foods. There's a lot of confusion into what is RTC and what is RTE and what is packaged foods. I'm not going to go and try and define what it is. What I'm going to ask is the three panelists who actually run very successful businesses in this segment to talk about their experience over the last, I guess the person who's been in the business the longest is Kramika, who's been doing it for now 20 years. I'll ask each promoter to talk about his business, how innovation has impacted the business over the last 5 years, and how innovation is impacting his business today as he plans for the next 5 years going forward. That will give each one of you a insight into importance of innovation throughout the food processing chain. And then I'll switch over to some of the investors on the panel to ask them about how they look at this sector, what are they investing in, the role innovation plays in helping them make their investment decision, and which are the emerging sectors which investors are attractive to them. Let me just kick off with Akshay, only because he's been the most experienced person in this panel on his journey over the last 20 years and the role innovation has played.
So, yeah, I'm very happy to be speaking on innovation today with all of you, and especially for a small business, innovation does play a very, very key role in trying to make a mark for yourself. So my journey has started off with a very, very me-too business, as I was introduced to. I've started a bread business, and of course there was a little bit of innovation in that also, and followed by a biscuit business where there's incremental innovation. But I think the big change happened when we had the opportunity to get into liquid condiments and get into perhaps as a supplier to McDonald's and developing products that the Indian customer needed, which were not being made elsewhere in the world. So that was perhaps the first experience on what innovation can do to a business. So in the last 20 years, from 1996 when we started out to today, has been a journey where the benefit of making, I would say, a slightly bigger disruption via innovation. I'm seeing the effect of that and how business has evolved. So, and particularly started off with development of the vegetarian mayonnaise in India and the whole lot of innovations that we did. But particularly we look and concentrate on just this one innovation, that it's had an impact on the growth of an industry. It's had the effect of, thanks to the environment and people getting into this business, created a new category of food products around mayonnaise, which have become very relevant to India. And India being so largely vegetarian, having vegetarian products which are suited to the local ethnic requirements perhaps becomes very, very important. So at the end of these years, if I analyze various businesses, the condiments business stands out in terms of its margins because of its product leadership, market leadership, and recognition in the market. So it's you kind of feel that there is more growth that the business can capture because it's resting on a relationship in the minds of the customer, that he associates the company with an innovation, and perhaps that association is much larger than the business itself. So when we look down and see these pointers come out in various interactions with customers, you can actually feel that yes, there's a lot more juice to be extracted from the market and a whole lot of growth. So I'm very happy that innovation, if a business is built on innovation, and in fact all businesses are built on some innovation, but the larger the scale of the disruption, the better the business is going to be. And if a business is trying to make itself without any innovation, then I can tell you that it's not really going to go anywhere. So from my journey is a journey which is resting 100% on innovation today. And we are looking forward to some more areas where I think I have another example to share, in fact, and that's about setting a business right which is not doing anything. So we are in the Indian snack foods business which is not going anywhere. And absolutely me too presentation. Finally ended up making kettle chips, which is extremely high-end product and has got huge recognition in the market. So certainly a floundering business is a huge value add, which we are looking at developing as a branded product across the whole region, the South and West Asian regions very, very quickly. So I can only say that, the opportunity is in innovation.
Actually, absolutely. Now, since we're talking about broadly packaged goods, ready to cook, ready to eat packaged food, there are two sides to the growing demand. One is the fact that innovation is producing new products to the market. Secondly is the demand drivers, changing lifestyles, urbanization, more women in the workforce, the need to have more convenience. As the CEOs or managing directors of your companies, how do you actually blend the two? How do you address what the customers want today given their changing lifestyles versus introducing new products which require education to the consumers? Vikas, we'd love to get your perspective.
Okay, thanks a lot. I think taking the cue from what you just said, this is precisely why KR Foods came in existence. The early 2000s in our country saw rising income levels and the income levels which nobody ever actually expected. I started working in the mid-90s, and if somebody would have told me that in 2005 this is the kind of money people are going to earn, I would have never believed those people. So what happens when people start earning more? What happens when the trend starts catching up? Primarily because of the money that you have. You start traveling abroad. You start eating outside more often than what you did, and you suddenly get exposed to the global cuisine. You suddenly get exposed to the convenience of not cooking and when you have more money, typically what you do is if you're staying in a rented apartment, you'll buy a house. If you have a two-wheeler, you'll buy a car. But what do you do with your food? You don't start eating more. In fact, on the contrary, when people start earning more, they start eating less. But what happens is that there's a certain need to improve the quality of the ingredients that you are having. So instead of having the normal rice, you will start eating basmati rice. Instead of having chakki ka atta, you will start having branded atta, multi-grain atta, and you now need to improve the quality of the ingredients that go in. So that suddenly opens up a huge opportunity for ready to eat, ready to consume, ready to cook, or better quality ingredients. As I said, the entire foundation of KR Foods was on innovation and changing trends. When we started off in 2008, the initial product line that was launched was the herbs and seasonings, which were completely unheard of in India. Even now, a majority of the people would have never used a packaged herb or a seasoning in their preparations, because only a few people who are, and with the number which is continuously increasing of people who are getting exposed to international cuisine, are using such products now. We were the first company to see what we realized is that when people have to take packaged foods, there is always this very Indian thinking that packaged foods will have some preservatives which is not good for me, and there's a very strong perception of fresh food has to be made fresh and all ingredients have to be fresh. So how do we kind of change that perception? So we were the first one to bring in something called freeze-dried ingredients, which is actually absolutely fresh vegetables. So even in the soups that we have recently launched, the ingredients are freeze-dried real vegetables. So somehow we all need to put in our effort to convince a customer going forward that there is a possibility of having convenience, taste and health all happening at the same time. Because somehow in our minds there is this trade-off that if I am getting healthy food, then it is not tasty. If I am getting tasty food, it might not be healthy. If I am having a convenience food, there might be some preservatives in it, which will make me, which will not make me use it as often as I want to. So I will maybe use it once in a while. But how do I kind of change that share of pie from maybe having only 1 out of 10 times convenience food to maybe 5 out of 10 times? I think that's the challenge which we all have as consumer packaged food industry.
Thanks, Vikas. And I'll come back to you in a little while, because I know Kia is also doing a lot of things in emerging segments like healthy foods. But let's ask Kannan to speak a little bit about his experience as innovative, the role of innovation and how that's prevalent in your business and how it's changed over the years.
So, if you were to think of frozen foods a few years back, what used to come to consumers' minds was peas, green peas. And so really the whole, the area of frozen foods is dominated by the whole driver of frozen foods was convenience. So frozen peas was about having peas even when peas are not in season. And therefore a number of products came in which was all about just addressing the consumer's quest for convenience. But that's been changing over the last few years, and that's where I think a lot of innovation has played a role. And therefore, marketers have identified new drivers which would grow frozen foods as a category. One of the biggest drivers of the last few years has been snacking. And therefore, I think the role of innovation was to go beyond what consumers could get easily at a neighboring halwai or make themselves at home, and look for products which could only be had by consumers in a frozen form. And that has led to a growth of the whole snacking category in frozen foods. In recent times, we're also seeing the emergence of another major consumer trend shaping the industry. As we were talking earlier about growing affluence and people's desire to eat food that they don't eat every day. So they want to, from time to time, eat stuff which is not part of their normal cuisine. So there is a bit of a food tourism which is at play out here. And we are all trying to understand how frozen foods can play to that. So, for example, meats which are not commonly available in the market, that started increasing, in terms of share of shelf in the frozen foods area. So these are some of the broad consumer trends which have been shaping the frozen foods industry. And obviously it's all been led by innovation, both in terms of product creation, but also we need to recognize the role of managing supply chain and innovating in the supply chain area. Because as you can imagine, when you're talking about frozen foods, you're talking about a lot of costs which ambient foods don't have. So you're talking about everything being transported at minus 18 degrees, stored at minus 18 degrees. So you're putting in a lot of costs into the product by the time it gets to the consumer. And therefore the role of innovation in the supply chain and how you can take out costs while at the same time giving the consumer a food experience that he or she wants to come back to, has also been, I think, a very key part of what has been driving the expansion of the frozen foods industry.
Vishal, I'm going to move to you now and skip Vikram for a little while, just to get your perspective on your industry. It's a 14-year-old business. You bought it 3 years ago. Very, very small business, very, very regional. You've taken it not only national but international. And the role innovation has played in your development of the business since its acquisition.
The role that innovation has played, it's played in a lot of fields. It's not only in product, it's in the technology part also that it has played an important role. Like for a small manufacturer, you only have that batch type of equipments to process your product. So we innovated out with a totally new concept where in a small bakery or a small baker can also have his product done on a continuous line, which generally previously used to come at 400 feet or 300 feet or something like that. I guess Mr. Victor must be knowing that biscuit lines are generally 300 or 400 feet. We have developed a line which is coming at 80 feet for a small manufacturer. So he can innovate from a regular rotary oven to this type of ovens. We did it for ourselves. Of course, we are not into ovens. But these type of innovations helped us to increase the product quality, consistency and everything. The other end innovations that really help up and are necessary is restructuring the product itself. Say, for example, you have cream rolls in the market, which is age old and people are loving it. You can innovate that into a different form itself. And you can deliver the same taste with a different form, with a different style. So in these type of products, traditional rusk or anything, you have a lot of other formations which can help out to develop new products and to deliver that products with a different experience. Because nowadays people are more getting into variety of foods. They are looking more often into snacking of products. And on a regular basis, they want some new products coming up and down. Let it be with some seasoning, some new flavorings or anything, some new formations, some new styles or anything. But they want a continuous change into the product. So innovation needs to be there on a continuous level and helps out to always grow into the market.
You know, that's an interesting perspective. Let me switch gears to Vikram. You know, Indian Value Fund has done 2 buyouts. First of VKL, then of Kia. You obviously have a view on the food processing industry, having backed 2 leading companies in their various segments. Why don't you share your perspective on what attracts IVF to the industry and the role you see of innovation as you make an investment decision?
Sure, thank you. I think as everybody has mentioned, there's enough demand, there's a lot of demand and it's going to continue to grow. The inhibitors or constraints at the moment for the processed food or packaged food to realize its potential are availability of technologies which are suitable for Indian food. So technologies in which areas, which is, you know, how do you process, preserve, store, transport and deliver. So we are specifically looking for innovations which help make the technologies in the preservation processes, in the storage and transportation processes suitable for Indian food. You know, to give you an example, you know, retort is a commonly used process for food preservation, but we know Indian food is very complex. The taste profiles change. It doesn't really taste as good as fresh food. So what we need is innovation in technologies for preservation, which is going to preserve the food for longer without changing the tastes. That's one area. Another example could be, you know, as Kannan mentioned, you need to transport food at -18 degrees, the frozen category, and store it at -18. So there's high capital costs and high operating costs involved in managing that cold chain. So we are looking for innovations in that area where can you reduce the capital cost as well as the operating cost significantly? And I know there are a lot of companies that we have seen in the recent past which are working in that area. Instead of taking things which are available in the West or proven technologies, looking at technologies which are made in India, for Indian product, addressing that need. And that, I think, those innovations which will work towards removing those constraints which are limiting our entrepreneurs in India, realizing the potential that there is for processed and readily available food, whether it is ready to eat or ready to cook.
Okay, thank you. Let's talk about emerging segments. If you look at all the reports that are coming out, ready to eat, ready to cook, expected to grow between 20 to 35% CAGR between 2014 and 2019. There's clearly demand. Consumers are willing to try. The evolution of modern retail and the availability of shelf space has made it easier for brands to reach to consumers. Having already built strong brands in your segments, how do you think about leveraging the brand equity you've already built and entering emerging segments which are still nascent but you think will provide huge opportunities over the next 10 or 15 years? Because India is, it takes time to build the market. And have each of you identified one or two new segments which you think you are well suited to enter? And would love to get your view. Akshay.
So Deepak, I think this is a very interesting point you're touching, especially because as Raghuram, our favorite banker, has been saying that India is looking towards a sustained period of growth and from a low-income nation to become definitely a middle-income nation in the next 5 to 7 years. Points out a huge opportunity opening up, especially in this space, which Deepak is mentioning about. So I would see, from our food, moving to eventually where the, more developed countries are, which is a lot of counters being devoted to chilled and frozen meals. But I think before we do that, there might be an intermediate stage where cooking solutions will become relevant. I think these solutions are going to compete a lot with delivery and a lot with simultaneously with retail shelves and chilled meals. But I do see a huge opening coming up for Indian cooking sauces. In fact, we've had a history of developing them internally and working a lot with the food service industry. And hopefully this is going to be an area where a launch should be seen very, very soon. And of course, as Vikram pointed out that, retort and other things add, issues with respect to flavor. And that's where the big challenge is going to be, that how do you crack the nut and get the product right? Because until and unless the product is right, we are not going to have a winner. So I think way forward is pretty much well defined. You are going to see cooking solutions, you are going to see chilled meals, you are going to see frozen meals and snack foods and other things come up. And I think that convenience, as income levels rise and health becomes more expensive, you are going to look at a lot of convenience, and cooking solutions and curries, for example, concentrates that we are planning to launch now, are going to be a major step forward. We'd also see a lot of changes happening in the market with respect to other condiments that people will end up using in cooking. So perhaps, as changing lifestyles, exposure to countries abroad and foreign cultures is going to have an impact. And I think from a packaged food standpoint, from our perspective, it is a pretty well-defined program.
Okay, so cooking solutions, things that make things more convenient, and given your experience, cooking sauces would be a interesting market entry. How is Kia thinking about the space?
I actually second Akshay in everything that he said. We as a community, we'll never start eating burgers and pizzas all throughout. We'll continue to eat Indian food. That is, I think, at least we believe in that. There will never ever be a time that all of us are only eating sandwiches and burgers and pizzas. We will continue to eat Indian food. There is a journey that at one point of time we'll all be eating packaged Indian food. But an Indian housewife takes pride in cooking. So while we go through this journey, which can be 20 years or 30 years, and we are looking at that time horizon right now, we need to give those solutions to this housewife to reduce this entire stress of creating Indian food, which has got 20 different things to do, and that's what we are working on. So we need to provide those solutions to the housewife to make the same tasty food, which and healthy food, by having less of the headache and less of the strain that today she goes through.
Okay,
So
fair enough.
that's a trend that we see.
Trend. And does Kia have any specific products which is already in the market or will enter the market addressing this?
We are working on some products. For example, one of the products that we are about to launch are the health snacks, because we see that the trend going forward is towards healthy snacking. We are about to launch. We have actually already done some test market on freeze-dried fruits and nuts, which can be very conveniently consumed. At kids can take them to school, and in offices and corporate canteens where people. So much of chips are being consumed, but at least because this trend of having a healthy alternative is developing very fast, we need to capture that trend.
Kannan, with the background of frozen foods, and given what innovators been strong in, what are the adjacent emerging sectors you see that may be attractive to your business going forward?
I tell you, as I said, there are three major drivers that we have identified, which are shaping our industry. So there is convenience, there is snacking, there is gourmet experiences. So one of the things that we've done is, when this business started years back, it was one brand. Sumeru was a brand. Now what we've done is created sub-brands to address each one of these drivers. So we reoriented a brand to our understanding of where the consumer is headed. The second piece of all of this is, what people have already in passing mentioned, which is that people are very concerned about what they're eating, and more people are increasingly more concerned about what they're eating. And there is all the bad press which is coming in about Western consumers eating processed food, and therefore suffering consequences. So one of the things that we've been consciously looking at is how do we make food which is free from preservatives, which is free from any non-natural additives, and making sure that that information is available front of pack so that the consumer gets it right there. Because we know that our consumer is keen to know more about what he or she is eating, or he or she is feeding to their family. So that's the second piece of removing or addressing some of the inhibitors to growth. I think as we consciously address that, the growth of the industry is going to be far better, and there is innovation required at times to make sure that you avoid those additives, which otherwise are just so easy to put in. Yeah? I think that's the second part of what we are been doing to try and expand our business. The third piece is really about innovating, and we are learning a lot from the experiences of our QSR customers. So we work very actively with McDonald's, with CCD, with Yum, Domino's, and so on. And we find that their big successes are when they take Western product concepts and then Indianize it. And that's something that we have been applying with a lot of success in the Indian market. So how can we take a Western product, bring in Indian flavors, and make that work for the consumer without... So the consumer wants Western concepts, but he or she wants a familiar taste experience. So how do you strike the balance between the two? That's been a great source of innovation for us.
And Vishal, as you think of your brand, Baker Street, and its growth over the last 3 years, Are there any clear emerging segments which you think are ready for you to address? Or is there so much happening in your core segment that you're very much focused on your core product range?
No, not exactly very much focused. We are, of course, diverging or creating other products into the same field. It's more into anytime snacking products, not specific products. This product is only for tea time or this is for lunch time. It's more getting into products which anytime products, which you can consume at any time of the day, not necessary to consume by a specific time period. So we are looking out to, in fact, we are in the process of developing that type of products. We have already done few. Launched also few. Also new products adding up to it, wherein a category like packaged cakes, which is already there, but more into a healthy packaged cake, which a school kid can carry it to a tiffin and have some good nutritional value added to it. So that type of products are there.
Vikram, you know, again, with the investor's lens, as you look at new opportunities, you know, it's how important are emerging growth segments, whether it's healthy foods, whether it's convenient snacking, whether it's chilled, whether it's clean label products with zero additives. How important is that as an investment thesis within IVF as we look at opportunities in the food processing segment?
Very important indeed. Everybody has mentioned that. So all of these ideas which promote healthy food or enable creation of healthy food, or brands who are trying to create readily available food which is addressing all the points which have been mentioned, whether it's convenience or health or nutrition, availability, cost. So we are backing those companies which are either innovating themselves on creating such products, or companies who are creating technologies to help create those products. So both the sides, front end as well as the back end. So we are looking for those kind of companies and entrepreneurs.
I'm just looking at the clock. We have about 12 minutes left, so I want to open the panel up to questions. I already have one question that's come in, and I think it's for Kanan, given that it's specifically on the frozen food segment. But in the meantime, we have more questions. Okay, let me start with the first one anyway. With frozen food segment now attempting to enter into a wide product SKU offering, is it worth to concentrate on specific product and SKUs, or should one cover as wide a product range as possible? And this question is trying to understand how best to tackle the high capital and operating costs. So the question is, you know, given that there are more freezers, the cold supply chain is getting better, there's more space dedicated to frozen. I guess as a new business, do you focus on one segment, be the McCain's or potato chips initially, or do you do what Sumero is doing and have a, I don't know how many SKUs you have now. Is there a right answer to the question?
I wish there were. There was just one answer. It's true that some players in the frozen foods industry focus on a core product. It's largely to do with their product heritage, okay, which is shaping their approach to the market. And I'm guessing that many years from today, that might be where many more people are. But when I look at what has happened in the broader foods industry, not just the frozen food, but ambient foods, you find that, you know, if you take a Nestle or a Unilever or a ITC, they're not just focused on cookies, or they're not just focused on coffee, right? They focus on, they do lots of different products. So they think of themselves as foods marketers, and they believe that they have the ability to scale up each of their categories and make sure that they deliver great consumer experiences with good margins, right? So I don't think there is one right answer. It's very much to do with how you think you want to play the game. Yeah.
Thank you, Kanan. I like the next question. It's something we discussed in the pre-panel hurdle. How much and how can local sandwich walas, juice walas, or even kiranas compete with RT and RTC? We've been talking about ready to cook, ready to eat, convenience, making it easier for the housewife to cook, to deliver a quality meal. Why can't there be a solution where the daba walas and the juice walas and the restaurants actually, you know, sort of mind the gap and provide delivered food at home at an affordable price. We've seen a lot of funding into delivery businesses. We've seen a lot of funding into internet first food delivery options who promise to deliver a meal at home within 20 minutes for 90 rupees. You know, given that we are trying to solve a similar problem, which is convenience, quick, fresh, you know, what role can these guys play in that market?
So, you know, I think this is going to be another big opportunity. So, you know, India is such a huge country. Let's not forget that we are 130 crore people, and every market is going to be a big, big market. So for sure, you know, if you relate to what I have spoken earlier in today's panel, there's an you know, consequent effect of that, those kind of products coming in the food service space also. So you would expect a sandwich wala or a local dhaba wala upgrade and deliver food. In fact, it's already happening. If you look at, you know, meals coming to offices, I think that's the you know, I think this is the beginning of ready meals getting into homes, and as couples get busier, they're going to find the solutions in the neighborhood. Yes, there will be some cooking solutions, cooking opportunities which women will have to do at home, and there's going to be a lot of eating out. If we look at the eating out trends, which means delivery included, India is already rising up, I think moving to almost from 1 or 2 occasions a month to about 6 to 7 occasions a month today. And countries like Singapore, which are practically eating 60 times a month. So the trend is going to be there, so it's going to happen. Both ways.
I have to agree with Akshay. I think the opportunity is huge. I think you'll see packaged foods, convenience food, out-of-home delivery, all playing a role in growing the market as a whole. Because what will change, and we've looked at a lot of emerging markets, whether it's Southeast Asia, whether it's South America, countries that are slightly further ahead than India in terms of evolution in GDP. And what you have seen is, despite the desire to cook fresh meals at home, cook them from scratch, the lifestyle and demands and the working habits of the younger demographics just do not let you cook 3-hour meals, or it just won't happen. So when you do cook, you want better ingredients, you want convenient ways of cooking. But on the occasions you can't cook, you know, you will look for solutions. And I think the market is very, very large. The food market in India is pegged at 240 billion if you look at it across the value chain. And there are always going to be people trying to take small bites of the market. Next question. I think Vishal will be the best place to answer this. Given that there still is a large traditional snacking market, albeit mainly unorganized, how can companies benefit from entering the unorganized market, making it more organized, and building a successful brand, which is exactly what you've been trying to do? So the question is, what can companies do, and how have you done it?
Traditional product segment is, as it is, a big segment and majorly held by unorganized sector. So as it is, there's a very big scope. Since consumers are changing their trend, they're more getting towards branded products. They want more quality conscious products, proper packaged products, proper made products with standards, with qualities and everything. So this is, as it is, a big opportunity for unorganized sector to get into an organized sector. So it's a whole, very huge, very huge. That was the reason that we took over this company in 2011. Because it is majority unorganized sector and a big scope to become an organized player.
I think, and I have to agree with Vishal, I think it's a mega trend. I think the unorganized sector at this stage is pegged at being 8 times larger than the organized sector. But with the penetration of modern retail, with the penetration of media into tier 2, tier 3, you will see many of these unorganized sectors becoming slightly more organized. The products might not change very significantly, but I think instead of seeing loose packaging and unbranded products, I think consumers are going to be more demanding and asking for a brand that stands for something, so that they have some idea of the quality they're getting. Next question, which I think is very relevant to all of us who are actually in the industry. Can you speak to the regulatory environment needed to assist and sustain the growth in the space? All of us had challenges with FSSAI, We've seen the pain each of us have to go through every 2 or 3 years as regulation changes, whether it's clean label, whether it's packaging. What can we as an industry do to work with the regulator to provide a better playing field for the evolution and development of this industry? You know, I don't know if anyone wants to even attempt this question.
Let me take the lead here again, because I have been involved a little bit in you know, the fringes of these acts being made, and I think particularly being in Delhi, that helps. So there's a real big need you know, to catch the bull by the horn. So fortunately, I don't expect the FSSAI to be hearing this in this room. You never know. But yeah, I think we are having a huge issue over there, and it may be an impediment to growth, because a lot of things that companies are wanting to do, there is somewhere or the other hurdle which is going to step in very, very quickly. And unfortunately, we have an act which is a little misdesigned for Indian environment and for our mindset. So I think, you know, laws have to be made keeping in mind how we in India behave and how our government officers behave. And what has, you know, the language that has worked in Europe or America may not work in India. So we do have a problem there, and it is a huge work in progress as of today. I don't know if there's if there's a government like in the Companies Act that it is really willing to change. I don't see that happen. So there's an issue that industry will have to just manage.
Okay. Just to add to it, I think it's good. It's good for from the consumer point of view that there is a regulatory body which ensures that whatever they get is good quality, and they are assured of what they are buying in the pack once they see a FSSAI logo. I have been in a regulated industry earlier, the telecom industry, and I know what pains we went through. But I think what happens is that, and what I foresee also happening is that once we all start falling in line and you know, following a path which is within the guidelines, ensuring that we're not cheating people and not giving them something which they don't need. Just like telecom, I expect them to also give us that freedom while they are, you know, at their worst or best, depending on which point of view you look at right now.
You know, I'll share my perspective as an investor. I've been investing in the food processing sector for 12 years. My first investment was, I guess, Sula Wines, almost 12 years ago. And having to work with the regulator is a fact. The good news is, in food processing, most regulators are willing to listen and hear. You know, they are trying to balance the need of the industry and the need of the consumer. And as the industry becomes bigger and more relevant, and as the lobby groups become larger, I, from experience, have seen, although the regulator is slow to move, when it does move, it usually moves in the right direction. There might be some hiccups, and everyone just says, Deepak, look at FSSAI. It was a hiccup, it was a knee-jerk reaction. But if you go back to why they did it, I think the root cause was good. The implementation is an issue. But you know, India is a leader in many ways. For example, India is leading the thinking in clean label breads or clean label frozen products. Additives which are commonly used in Europe and the US have been banned in India for years. So I'll give you a real example. One of our companies makes frozen dough. So if you ever go to any Subway and have a sandwich in India, all the bread comes from one of our factories. And India banned 3 additives 3 years ago. The US is going to ban it from 2017, and Europe is going to ban it from 2018. Europe and US is now looking at India to understand how we had produced the bread now without those additives. So you know, there's a lot of innovation that took place in India because the government banned these products early on. And I think India can be a leader in many, many segments. And it already is. I've run out of time. I'd like to thank the panelists for a fantastic session. And I also want to thank the audience for very interesting questions. Thank you very much.